Sew it on, face the fool. December's tragic drive. When time is poetry and stolen the world outside. The waiting for another episode of Columbia House Party could crush my heart. Jake, what's up, man?
Not much. It hits so good when you're waiting for it. The waiting there was me waiting for your opening line.
You know, these poetry-heavy albums are a little tougher to, it's not the toughest thing in the world, but you want it to be smooth, and you don't want to ruin the artist's poetry in this case, right?
Yeah, we'll do something. One day we'll get you a nice, simple opening track.
Yeah, or something I could just like scream, or there was the one episode where I was just gonna leave it because it's an instrumental. We got lots of options. This one was fine. It's okay. I just didn't want to. Today's album is good enough and important enough that I just didn't want to touch it too much.
That's fair. I get that, but I liked it. I think you did a good job. But I always think you did a good job.
Jake, I'm excited about today's album, not only because it's been a minute for us, but because this is a big world builder, as I've come to be fond of saying, as we zoom back out at a lot of the bands that influence the bands that we discuss on this podcast.
A foundational record, I would say. Maybe one of the most, maybe not the most famous, but perhaps one of the most foundational records we've talked about thus far. In terms of the music and genres we like and discuss.
Yeah, some would say it's the number one album in that genre of all time, which we'll certainly get into. Today, adjacent to that, kind of more on the emo pop and pop punk explosions, we trace it back further to one of the bands that came to define the Midwest emo or second wave emo sound, if you prefer. As things started to break away from the initial emotional hardcore definition of bands like Rites of Spring, you see things kind of split into hardcore emo core, and this so-called Midwest emo. Today takes us there. Jake, what do you got for us?
So today we are talking about, as we said, a massive foundational album in the genre of emo. And I think an album that a lot of people, maybe not myself, but a lot of people would consider as a gateway album to emo music. And I feel like this is one of those albums that have sort of, I'm not sure if this is the right term, but it feels like it's just sort of always existed. Like I have no real recollection of when I first heard this album. I know it was in high school, but I don't really remember. It's not one of those albums that someone was like, you got to listen to this. It's just one of those albums that just sort of, as we are fond of saying, insists upon itself. It's one of, if not the most famous early emo albums, or most important, or whatever you want to call it. It has spawned many bands, some much, much more famous than the one we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about the seminal, to use the word, Diary by Sunny Day Real Estate.
I'm going to jump to kind of the end here and to give you an example of just how influential this album is. That song was called Sometimes by Sunny Day Real Estate off of Diary. And if you listen to the first 15 seconds of it, it sounds so much like Sun by the Hotelier. And like the Hotelier don't sound like Sunny Day Real Estate. You know, there's a little bit of the same like approach to writing from kind of a poetic perspective, but this is like, we're talking like the third derivative of influence here. But then like 15 seconds into that song, I'm like, oh yeah, I absolutely see where the Hotelier listened to the band that listened to Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yeah, for sure.
It happens really quickly when you go back to it. Jake, you threw the word gateway out there earlier. I almost wonder if like for people of our age, because this album is fairly old and it came out in 1994. I almost wonder if the better definition is like a reverse gateway album where like not a lot of people our age and who listen to the music that we do would have like, because normally we talk about gateways as like, oh, you listen to Sunny Day Real Estate and then you got into this, and this. Whereas this is almost the opposite, where it's like, oh, you're already listening to this stuff, so what's the harm in trying this? And of course you're going to like it because the bands that you liked it so much and pulled from it so much.
I think that's probably correct. I mean, it certainly was for me in that this was, again, I don't really remember how I came across it. It must have been in an interview of another band I was listening to or an article about emo or something. But I think you're right, because obviously this album came out when I was 6 and I didn't get into, you know, first wave emo when I was 6 years old, unfortunately. But I think you're right. I think that this album not only has influence, if you like this genre, this album has influenced something you like. And it's sort of a band that gets talked about by the bands that you like. So I think you're right. I think reverse gateway or grandfather or whatever you want to call it, I think is probably more accurate than just a gateway album.
Yeah, I like reverse gateway because it's just like, you know, if you're doing hard drugs, what's a little toke off the joint?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I'm already listening to this stuff. What's a little Sunny Day Real Estate?
This is the ketamine of.
Yeah, I'm already deep into the world is a beautiful place, and I'm no longer afraid to die. What's a little Sunny Day Real Estate? So, Jake, in terms of why we chose this one, I mean, that pretty much sets it up, right? Like this is at the top of or near the top of the emo tree. So much of the bands we talk about or will talk about flow from Sunny Day Real Estate, Cap and Jazz, Braid, Texas Is the Reason. You know, we can get into some of the bands they've influenced, but if you're doing, you know, first derivative influence, you can look at bands like American Football and Jimmy Eat World, and then those kind of open the door for Get Up Kids, and Promise Ring, and you have this second wave of Taking Back Sunday and Dashboard Confessional and Brand New, and Dashboard Confessional, the connection gets like very literal at some point. So were we structuring the podcast architecturally or chronologically, this one would have been one of the very first episodes instead of here, but here we are in episode 29. If you're not familiar with the album, you know, I think people probably have, at least some people are listening to the albums before we jump into the episodes, but some people might be experiencing them for the first time through this podcast. I think you'll hear right away a lot of, you know, bands that you like, and you'll pick up pretty quickly on why we're doing this album and how it influenced other bands that you like. Me personally, this kind of reverse gateway thing is how I experienced Sunny Day Real Estate. It's, you know, it's tracing back from Jimmy Eat World, Taking Back Sunday, Dashboard. I would have been 8 when this album came out, and I was certainly, you know, I was listening to Silverchair at that point. I was not listening to Sunny Day Real Estate. And then even like as a teen, my instincts weren't to go back and listen to older stuff. It was just listen to what I like. It wasn't until like maybe my mid to late 20s where I started going back and, you know, listening to Read Nothing Feels Good and go back to listen to some of the bands that influenced the bands that I like. Was it similar for you? This is something you came to in, you know, the last 5 to 8 years or so?
No, not at all. I think I was a young completionist, if that's the right term.
Yeah, I love that term.
I was big in high school into, if I liked a band, I needed to know everything about that band. I needed to know the band members. I needed to know what bands they used to be into. I needed to know like what they were influenced by and what they liked. And so I'm going to assume that's how I came across this. I could not tell you which band it was, but honestly, it could have been any of them. I think that this was sort of, I think I got into this band around the same time I listened to like Rites of Spring and, you know, early Fugazi and sort of like the the bands that people, and like Jawbreaker, Descendants, the bands that people talk about when they talk about sort of the birth of emo and pop punk as we think of them today, or as we thought of them in whatever, 2005. So I think that this was an album that I knew of and listened to and have on CD in high school. But it was kind of like just part of the collection. I think it was an album I had to have because it's such a huge part of the tapestry for me at that point. And it wasn't until I was at the Score at the time, so it must have been like 7-8 years ago then. I don't know why. I just started listening to this album and this band a ton. And I can't remember what spawned it, but I think I didn't gain
general malaise at the Score, probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. But I think it's also sort of, I've talked to this on this show 100 million times about sort of getting back into emo and pop punk and being comfortable with it in my 20s. And I think that appreciation of getting back into that genre and all those bands that this influenced, I think kind of coincided and went hand in hand. And it was like, okay, I can listen to this album and, to your point, hear, The Hotel Year. I can hear World's a Beautiful Place. I can hear all these bands I listen to regularly and really love. And now I can sort of appreciate where it came from. Whereas in high school, it was like, I like this, but it's not the band I'm listening to at the moment, so I don't know how much I want to listen to it.
That's fair. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure there's equal numbers of people who came to it your way, equal numbers of people who came to it my way. We are going to get into the details of Sunny Day Real Estate's diary after this.
Dan Horner and Nate Mendel met in 1992 when they were housemates at the University of Washington. They decided to form a band and recruited their friend William Goldsmith to play drums. They released a demo tape under the name Empty Set. They then changed their name to, I am not kidding, Chewbacca Kaboom, which I kind of wish they kept, but I see why they didn't.
Right up there for Rainbow Butt Monkeys as great band names that you probably had to change, man.
Chewbacca Kaboom sounds like an Andy Dwyer band name from Parks and Rec. They changed their name because Empty Set was apparently already a band, so they had to change their name. They released a demo tape under the name Chewbacca Kaboom to little fanfare before deciding that, hey, maybe one of the reasons we're not getting attention is because our band is called Chewbacca Kaboom, and they changed their name to Sunny Day Real Estate. The name doesn't really have a ton of meaning. Nate Mendel has said that he thought of the name because it was just a random thought that popped into my head that came from a Talking Heads song, Nothing But Flowers, which is a great song and also the song that got me into the Talking Heads, but I don't really see why. I mean, I see why it's the connection, but it's a clever little path he took there.
I wonder, if they were called Chewbacca Kaboom, would they have, like, trademark wise and stuff, like, would they have gotten in trouble if they got big?
That's a good question.
The Star Wars people have come after them?
I don't know. Chewbacca Kaboom does sound like it's like an Origami Angels song title, though. Or yes. Some weird thing that they reference, I don't understand.
Yes, in 16-bit.
Yeah, exactly. Mendel said that he felt that since the band's outlook on the world saw that every possible thing was becoming a commodity to be bought and sold, it was possible that one day people would even start selling sunny days, which sounds like something Kyrie Irving would say. After looking for vocalists, Dan Horner took duties after also testing a female vocalist. They were an instrumental 3-piece at this point. After releasing another 7-inch...
Wait a second. You're telling me this instrumental 3-piece named Chewbacca Kaboom wasn't getting off the ground?
From the University of Washington in the early 90s? Yeah. It's a real shocker there. I bet their crowds were a bunch of characters. After releasing another 7-inch, Mendel decided to take a break from the band, and William Goldsmith called his friend Jeremy Enck to join a new project where Dan Horner played bass and Enck played guitar. I apologize if I'm pronouncing Jeremy Enck's last name incorrectly. I've never known how to pronounce it, and I still don't. So
it is also pronounced inconsistently if you look at interviews.
So I'm doing my best, folks. I apologize.
Just call him Jeremy. Everyone knows. We're all friends.
Yeah. Okay, let's go first name. I like it. Despite Nate Mendel's objections, Jeremy Enck became a full-time member of the band and the frontman. I'm not sure exactly what his objections were. if he just wanted to keep it a 3-piece instrumental group or what, but that's what happened. At this time, the band also started to change their sound and trended towards a slower sound than they had before, which would become sort of in the indie emo sound that we know of theirs today. For a band that is so monumental, let's say, there is a shocking lack of information about the band in the period between forming as a band and releasing Diary. It was a very quick sort of turnaround. Like, they formed in 92 and this album came out in 94. But it's just, I find it odd that for a band that's like, we've talked about bands that are sort of this stature, so to speak, on the show before. And it's like, great, this episode's going to be so easy to prep for. There's tons of information. Sunny Day, weird, like, lack of early history.
Yeah. So much of it is like post Diary, right? And probably, probably what contributes to that, I'm guessing, is that one, no one was paying attention to them until they broke through and were influential. So you don't have a lot of real time stuff. And then two, they haven't been the most forthcoming with stuff. And because they didn't last super long, if they had released 5 more albums and were still relevant in terms of new music now, and there were documentaries or at least features or whatever, you might get them to open up about some of that. But you don't. All you get is some weird Goldsmith comments about a potential 5th album.
We'll get into
that.
We'll
talk about later.
So the project that Ank, Goldsmith, and Horner formed was called Thief, Steal Me a Peach. I don't know where they're getting these. They had started recording a full length as that group and then brought Mendel back into the fold to reform or form, however you want to look at it, Sunny Day Real Estate. The song list for Diary started with 6 songs from the aforementioned Thief, Steal Me a Peach. The first songs from these sessions were titled based on the order that they were written. Those songs included songs called 8, 9, 47, 48, and the first track off Diary, and the best track, if you ask me, 7.
Love those normal song titles.
Hey, you know what? I respect the simplicity. Just to let's write them, let's name them when we wrote them. Why? Song titles are hard.
Yeah, but the thing that's tough is that it makes it hard to remember which song is which, right? It's like the new Childish Gambino album where it's just the time signature on the album. It's fair. That's not super helpful if I need to find one song. And for, Kendrick did that with Untitled Unmastered too. It's look, I'm going to listen to these all in a row, so it's not a big deal. But if I just want to pull one out, you're making it difficult.
As I said, not a ton of information about the recording of the album. Just that it's they made it and it came out. I don't know where else to go with that. But the album was positively reviewed at the time but was obviously, it was sort of a blooming genre, so to speak. There was not the praise and legacy status and classic outlook on it at the time. The band played 7 on The Jon Stewart Show, which is a very 90s sentence, and they also played it on MTV's 120 Minutes. Perhaps the reason why there isn't a lot of information on this band's period is at the time, they allowed 1 publicity photo and a single interview for the album, which...
Yeah, that would explain it.
However, they did allow an ad of themselves to be posted in Nordstrom's, the department clothing store, which confused everybody, it seems. In a 1998 interview with Norm Arenas of Texas Is the Reason, Dan Horner explained that the band made up a fake band name and brought in a fake lead singer for the shoot, only to have the store stick their real band name on the ad in the end. So
wait, there was an ad there that it wasn't actually the band, but it had the band's name?
I think it was them plus some guy. And then they'd given Nordstrom a different name. And then it came out as Sunny Day Real Estate anyway, which obviously in the 90s underground-ish scene wasn't everyone's favorite cup of tea. Jeremy Yank told the AV Club in 2016, "We had just signed to Sub Pop. It was super exciting, and we were literally just in the office. And the press guy back then said, 'Hey, so I just got a call from Nordstrom, and they're looking for a new and upcoming grunge band on Sub Pop to pose as models.' We just said, 'Are they going to pay?' We were all broke. I was like 17 or 18, but we didn't want to be called Sunny Day Real Estate. We were going to play a big trick on Nordstrom, this big corporation. So we asked if we could do it, but if we could call ourselves Flattenberda. And for some reason, Sub Pop said, 'Yeah, let's do it.' So he set up the photo shoot and we played along like we were this band called Flattenberda." So
sure,
that's that weird story. Apparently
they should have posed this Chewbacca Kaboom.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Apparently this all sort of fell apart, or this grand plan of theirs fell apart, where one day Nate Mendel was talking to somebody from Nordstrom and he let it slip out that they were Sunny Day Real Estate. This is also Enk's quote saying, "So we got caught in our own game. Eventually, they ended up putting our own name on the ad and we got caught trying to be devious. We were just punkers trying to jack the corporation." This is very 90s talk. "And then it was just instant karma. In the end, we were wrong and we got hit for it. And it doesn't matter if they're a corporation. It was still dishonest, right? And we got hit, but it didn't do any harm to our cool guy reputations in the end." So just an odd press tour for this album.
A lot going on. Like, I feel like we're getting worked.
It does sort of
I feel like this is the emo version of Popstar going on here.
On the sort of note of why there is one interview and just this weird Nordstrom thing, and that was their press tour, and why they don't do interviews, Jeremy Yank said, "To be honest, they're nerve-wracking and annoying. We were focused on making music. We wanted to get together and go into the basement because in Seattle, where you rehearsed in those days was just in the basement of houses, and make music. We just wanted to bring our passion and our conflict and our joy into this musical form, and it was a truly magical experience." So the irony here actually comes from a track that's not on Diary. I don't mean to jump too far ahead, but we're going to because it applies to this. The irony here is that the band, despite being on a Nordstrom ad, in response to "Are we going to get paid?" as their reasoning, they would write a song on their 1998 album, How It Feels to Be Something On, about how the band refuses to follow fashion rules on the song Guitar and Video Games. How is it you feel? I remember you in the tub of my room. Whoa, these things we wondered how to hide. See how it works when over day long in a bunch of mud. Whoa, these fears we wondered how to hide.
That sounds like Decemberists cosplay. I know we talk about Sunny Day Real Estate influencing everyone else, but that one sounds backward, the other direction.
I think one of the funnier things to look back on sort of a lot, not all, but a lot of 90s emo and punk rock is like, I completely understand the worry about being a sellout or corporate or whatever. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it anymore. I definitely used to, but I get it. But there was a particular way that it was talked about in the 90s that just sort of, it's so up its own ass, I think, that it looking back on it, it's like, I get it, but like, just like get over it in a way.
Yeah, but that's kind of just music. Like I was going to say like, oh, maybe that's why this genre was looked at a certain way, but you're going to find that everywhere.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is what it is. This is why everyone should just accept not being cool and just lean into that, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Take the Weezer approach.
The band really leaned into not the Weezer approach. Looking back, Jeremy Yank said, "We were punk rockers, and from the outset, that was where we came from. Not following the mainstream was in our blood. I relate to that line fully because I have an aversion to conformity. Even when I'm forced to conform, we all are on many levels. That line is definitive. It says exactly what it means. Be an individual, you know. Be yourself." They have some real fake deep quotes, like so many fake deep quotes. I kind of love it.
Yeah, we should have brought Alex Wong back on the podcast just for a quick segment on like rank the fake deep Sunny Day Real Estate quotes. Or is this Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, or Sunny Day Real Estate?
Kings of fake deep. Another weird thing about the band in this time is they refused to play in California.
Yeah, did you find anything out about this?
I found one kind of related quote about it from Dan Horner talking to the AV Club in 2009. So apparently in the 90s, at the height of this band, they never really explained why they didn't play in California. They just didn't. And it's still really hard, like a lot of things in this band, it's really hard to find definitive information on why. So Dan Horner told the AV Club in 2009, "It's kind of in line with what Sunny Day wanted early on, to be an anti-establishment outfit. I think it's why we decided we didn't want to play any of the games that we saw other bands playing trying to be popular, other than the Nordstrom's ad, I guess. And I think that we were pretty influenced by that kind of Fugazi, we owe you nothing, you have no control ethic. Like, we're going to let you have one picture of us, we're going to do one interview, and we're just going to let our music speak for us, and that's going to be that." Around that time, I think there was some music industry dude who was courting Sunny Day. I don't want to name any names, but I think the guy had said something to me about needing to play the game to have any lasting impact in music, and something must have stuck in my mind about this person saying, you have to move to LA, and you have to play in LA, and you have to be popular in California before you can be a popular American rock band. And I think being the dickish, arrogant, counterculture rebel that I was, I said, "Oh, really? Well, fuck you. I'm never going to play in California. I'm never even going to go to California. Let's see what happens." It got to the point where this idea in the band got so over the top and consuming that when the band was asked to perform at the 1994 Almost Acoustic Christmas in Los Angeles for the radio station K-Rock, Dan Horner refused to join them, leaving Ank, Mendel, and Goldsmith to perform the show as a trio. So if that's not sticking to your guns, I don't know what is.
Look, we've talked at times on this podcast about some groups that haven't played the game and, you know, or did certain things to, if not get in their own way, that maybe just didn't fall in line with what a band trying to be as successful as possible would do. This is taking that to an illogical extreme.
Yeah, this is like one of the more ridiculous.
Is he okay?
I don't know. He seems to be okay now because at least he can look back on it and call himself a dick. Like, I think definitely, like, as a person who was a pretentious douchebag in my younger days, like, I get it. Like, I get being young, especially when you're in, like, a cool band and, like, wanting to be cool and counterculture and all that. I just feel like there's better...
I had a blog, so I get it.
I just feel like there's better battles to pick than, like, I'm not playing in a state. I don't see how that, like, gets you to where you want to be.
What if you have fans there? Why is it...
Right?
Like, the state of California did not tell you this. Your fans in California did not tell you this. It was just one jabroni.
And they're a West Coast band, too, so you'd think they would have had fans in California. Like, it's not like they're a New York band.
Just make sure this guy doesn't get to come, that's all.
Yeah, it's very odd.
I hope that there's more to this story that we just couldn't find and dig up, because...
I hope. Or maybe
I don't like this story as is.
Knowing this band, maybe there's not. Maybe it was just a stupid thing that Dan Horner decided.
We're going to talk about LP2. We're going to talk about LP2 and more stupid things that they did.
Speaking of other stupid things this band did. So after finishing the tour for Diary, the band regrouped to record their follow-up to Diary. It didn't go well. The band had a lot of tension that, surprise, surprise, the details have never been shared. Although it's always been rumored that Jeremy Enck's conversion to Christianity was what caused the tension within the band. If you go online, there is a very old, very 90s looking GeoCities ass website, which is the Sunny Day Real Estate Fan Forum. I'm not positive it's still active. It certainly doesn't look like it from a web design perspective that it's still active, but there is a, for lack of a better word, dissertation that Jeremy Enck posted explaining the Christianity rumors and the rumors that the band was breaking up because of his Christianity. I'm not going to read the whole thing now because it's in my Microsoft Word notes. It's almost the entire page, but single spaced. But basically, he says that when I look back on our last album, Diary, I look at it as a diary of our emotions at the time it went down. This will be the same as the next album. And then he talks about admitting, he said, "Yes, sir, I have given my life to Christ. For a long time, I dwelt on the pain of my life, pain that I had to get rid of in many different ways. When I took a shot calling upon God, he answered me. My pain was gone. I was full of joy. I had hope again." And then he goes on a lot about what it means to give your life to Christ. And then he says, near the bottom, "One of the members doesn't mind me singing about Christ. Another is very uncomfortable with the idea of me singing about Jesus. And one didn't mind, but now all of a sudden does. I understand where they are coming from because I was there. Jesus isn't anything I want to compromise with, for he is far more important than this music, financial security, or popularity could ever be. So the idea of breaking up has been talked about. I have different intentions now. I want to take the band on a different path than they. It is no longer the financial freedom that once controlled me, but it is to expose people to the truth for their sake and especially Jesus' sake. The future is the future. I hope that we come to a decision about the band that everyone is happy with." And then 7 months after Diary was released, the band broke up. So
I'm glad you only read the condensed version of that quote.
It's so long.
Look, don't get me wrong. I can appreciate where he's coming from. And like, obviously, I'm happy if anyone finds something that makes them feel whole and happy like that.
For sure.
But the lack of like understanding for the other members of the band not wanting to transition to being like a Christian emo band, you got to have a little understanding of that too. Like, happy for you, but I don't think, I understand where the other members were coming from is what I'm trying to say. As happy as I am that you found fulfillment. These
guys don't seem like the best communicators in the world, I would say.
Yeah, that comes up more times as they enter the post-Sunny Day real estate parts of their careers, a couple of them.
Dan Horner told Rolling Stone in 1998 that the band broke up well before they entered the studio to record the follow-up. He said Sunny Day ended a long time before Sunny Day seemed to end to other people. The second record was made as a broken-up band, so it definitely has a certain tension to it. It's got this feeling to it that tells it was made by people who had given up associating with one another. However, the band has downplayed that Christianity was the reason for the split. 2009, Enck told AV Club it wasn't the reason the band broke up, but it did influence my final decision in leaving the band. So it just sounds like there was normal, young, successful band tensions. I'm sure the Christianity thing played a part in it because it just is talked about so much in relation to this band and in their past interviews that, like, even if they're downplaying it, I feel like I don't want to like assume, but it does kind of seem like it was part of it.
There are some inconsistencies for a band that doesn't talk about their history a lot. There are some like pretty obvious inconsistencies in the retelling of the story. Like even just the fact that, we were broken up by the time we recorded LP2 or whatever. But there's also they've also said that a lot of those were just leftover tracks from the Diary sessions. It's like,
yeah, and to the point where they've said that the lyrics for the album weren't even finished, and they were just instrumental tracks, and Hank just kind of made up the lyrics on the spot, and that's what's on the record.
Yes, including the weird Japanese translations. Did you get into these at all?
No, I don't think I did. Please illuminate me.
Okay, so there is a quote that says, "We broke up and we just felt like we were done. We put no energy into the artwork or into anything." End quote. That's why the album cover is just pink and it's plain. Continue quote. On a lot of songs, there aren't lyrics. In a lot of cases, we never sat down to write them because we just wanted to get it out of the way as fast as possible. So I just sang a lot of gibberish, which makes it really quirky. My favorite is the Japanese translations. So I guess on the Japanese version of the CD, the way the lyrics are translated are like dramatically different. The song Jaina, J'_NUH, I think that's how it's pronounced, is like, if you look at the Genius annotations, they have the Japanese ones there as well. And they're dramatically different, and I can't tell which one I like better because the other, like, they still seem like kind of cohesive. They're just really different. It's cool. I recommend going to that and looking at the difference in the lyrics. You certainly don't want me to read out or sing the difference in the lyrics, but
I want you to sing them. But
go look at that, because the as interpreted on the Japanese CD is a lot of fun. You get lyrics like "a pumpkin knife to cry out."
Sure.
Yes, it's supposed to be one pumpkin knife to pry out their hands on silver bars, but a pumpkin knife to cry out.
Sure.
There's some good stuff in there.
Whatever works for you, right?
Yeah. Not the best way to write good, cohesive songs.
No, but the album's kind of good. It came out in 1995. It was just titled LP2. It has since been referred to as the Pink Album due to its pink cover, which happened because the Sub Pop asked the band for art, but they had nothing, so they just told them to make it pink. And it is. After the band's breakup, Jeremy Enck would pursue a solo career, and Dan Horner moved to a farm. Some real pop star vibes there.
What is going on?
Nate Mendel and William Goldsmith would join a band you might have heard of called the Foo Fighters, but that's a whole other story for possibly another time. In 1997, Sub Pop began pressuring Enck and Horner to release a rarities record, and the band decided to record a few new songs for it, enjoyed the sessions, and they got back together. An inconsistent group of fellas. Enck told the AV Club in 2016 that Sub Pop approached us because we had a few miscellaneous songs we hadn't released on anything. I think one was Bucket of Chicken, which is a weird name. It's weird to say it out loud. And there was some stuff for the soundtrack for The Crow 2 and a few songs Sub Pop wanted to release. They asked if we wanted to do something called the Odds and Ends, like an EP or something, but we realized we didn't have that much material, so Dan and I decided to get together and just write a couple songs. We ended up writing pretty much all of How It Feels in just a couple weeks. I had a bunch of stuff planned for my next solo record, and he had a bunch of material that he had been working on, and we brought it together, and the next thing you know, we just said, let's just get together and make a full record. So the first new Sunny Day Real Estate song made in somewhat ideal conditions, at least for this band, is the first track on How It Feels to Be Something On, Pillars.
Stay the same, girl. I know you wanna be the rain. You know that we would fall in there for a time and then fall again. For a while I'd take you marrying no bones, dawn's gray, the sign and no winter light. I know that you can feel the pain. Your eyes speak 100 million nights. Will
They said that it was the most fluid process of writing a record that they had ever had. Said Diary was pretty fluid too, but this was easygoing. Dan and I got together on acoustics and wrote it just like face to face. Then we brought in William, which was easy because he can sync into anything. However, because nothing is simple and easy with this band, Nate Mendel does not appear on this record because he decided to stick with the Foo Fighters, which I can sort of understand.
Yeah, if you like money.
Yeah.
Or like dealing with what sounds like a more straightforward band dynamic.
And just make a lot of money. So much money.
Yeah. I don't have money. I don't know what it's like to have a lot of money, but I imagine it's great.
I imagine it's pretty fun. Dan Horner told Rolling Stone in 98 that we were pretty confident. We thought that Willie would quit the Foo Fighters to do it. And then miraculously, Willie got screwed over by Dave Grohl and had to quit. Keep that in mind for another day.
Yes.
But Nate couldn't walk away. We waited for him forever. It became the theme of our lives, waiting for Nate. It came down to the wire and we were like, you've got to quit by this date. And he did. But then the next day he called and said, the anxiety is too great. I got to stay where I know that I'm going to get paid. I don't think he understood Sunny Day musically and financially was going to be something big. So I will say about that quote, Sunny Day did become something musically and financially quite big. But if you're really comparing yourself to financially the Foo Fighters, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he hitched his old wagon to the right horse there, or other way around. Do you hitch a horse? Either way, he did some good hitching.
Something was hitched properly, is what I would say.
And he has more money now as a result.
Yes. How it feels to be something on sold 11,000 copies in its first week. It has aged incredibly well. I think there's a bit of a debate as to whether or not we were going to do that or Diary, because I think we could have done either. They're both excellent.
I could have gone either way in terms of how much I like each album, and really, given the timelines, like you could still make some pretty good arguments about the influence of How It Feels to Be Something On. But Diary is just, it's too enormous. It's too big, man. It's too important.
Due to the way that LP2 was made, there were tons of rumors that the record was improvised, which the band has denied. There's a lot of very spiritual poetry influences on the record. Hank says it was written in a 2-week period, and there's some chanting on the record that's improvised, but the record on the whole was not. The band also released a live album around this time, simply called Live, which was recorded on the How It Feels tour. In the weeks after the release, the band noted their displeasure with the video and CD, complaining that Sub Pop did not allow them final approval of the artwork or the final mixes. And having fulfilled their contract obligations, the band left the label. They finally signed with Time Bomb Recordings, an independent label distributed by BMG, which allowed them to sort of have the freedom of an indie label, but still have the backing of a bigger, wider distribution of a major label. They would release The Rising Tide in 2000, which I will admit is not an album I'm super familiar with. I don't know if you are, but I feel like it kind of fades into the back of the Sunny Day canon, so to speak. At the end of the tour, the band expressed its desire to finally reach out to its European fans and take their first overseas tour. However, on the eve of the tour, Time Bomb pulled its funding, claiming that they simply could not afford to support the band overseas. And it turned out the band had invested a substantial amount of money in supporting Peter Searcy's Could You Please and Thank You, and the album had performed so poorly that the label was almost completely bankrupt. Not only could they not support Sunny Day Real Estate overseas, they could no longer fund the band at all. And a few weeks later, the label ceased operation, and then the band broke up. This has to be one of the most chaotic band stories certainly the most we've done.
Yeah. They packed a lot into like 6 years.
Yeah, this is all like 94 to 2000, which is wild. After the band broke up, Dan Horner lived his pop star fantasy and went back to his farm. He would later work with Chris Carrabba with Dashboard Confessional, which you might have heard of.
Yes, that was the reference I made earlier about how the connections between Sunny Day Real Estate and modern emo get quite literal at one point. It's a little heavy-handed to just be like, no, I'm working with Dashboard Confessional now. Here is the quite literal passing of the torch.
In like that time too, in like the early 2000s Dashboard, when it was like the thing. Yeah.
Not to say that Dashboard is like the same type or quality of emo as Sunny Day Real Estate, but
I think there's an influence to be made, or an argument to be made. They're just as influential in their own way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's for anyone who hasn't read Nothing Feels Good, I strongly recommend reading it. The entire book is told through the narrative through line of Dashboard Confessional, and it traces back to Sunny Day Real Estate and even further back to Rites of Spring, up to, the early 2000s kind of emo boom. And, Dashboard was, I guess, maybe like pop emo or a little more on the folk side or whatever. But yeah, in terms of, hey, here's this thing we created a decade ago, and you're going to kind of help take to the next level in the mainstream. Pretty apt. All right, we are going to talk about a little bit more of the influence of Sunny Day Real Estate, as well as, just a little bit more of the weirdness around that band and coming out of Diary after this.
In 2003, Enck, Goldsmith, and Mendel formed The Fire Theft, another band I've never really listened to, who released their debut and only album in that year. Nate Mendel remained, and still is to this day, a member of the Foo Fighters. In April 2009, several websites reported the band had reunited with all 4 original members. They played a secret show on September 16th, 2009 at Hell's Kitchen in Tacoma, Washington. To coincide with the reunion tour, the band's first 2 albums were remastered and reissued with bonus tracks. They also played a new song on the tour that was not on one of these bonus tracks, fittingly titled 10. They hinted over and over again that there could be new material upcoming, but that has yet to materialize. In 2013, Mendel told Music Radar that Sunny Day Real Estate are currently inactive. He said, "We're not doing anything. We had a, quote, interesting reunion experience a couple years ago. We got together out of the blue and patched up old relationships and differences and just wanted to do some reunion shows. It turned out great, and it was a lot of fun, and we sort of accidentally wrote a song, and we were like, okay, why don't we try to do a record? We spent a lot of time writing an album's worth of songs and then went to record it in Los Angeles, funny enough. All of the writing had been done up in the Northwest, where most of the guys are located, and the recording process it fell apart. So that was probably the end of the band. If we couldn't make any new music, what's the point?" However, a year later, the band released a split 7-inch with Circa Survive with the song Lipton Witch, their first new song recorded in 14 years. I want more of that. That song rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I could deal with that. It feels very like mid to late 2000s Edge 102. It's not bad, but it certainly would have been more like commercially accessible than the earlier stuff.
I think so. I also feel like
a little Kings of Leon vibe to it.
Yeah, emo Kings of Leon. I'll go to bat for that. I feel like a Sunny Day Real Estate like large venue tour would blow the doors off. Like at least financially.
Yeah. And then what you do is the two openers, you go with like a new and then like a mid-era emo band as well.
Yeah. I agree with that. Maybe we should book a tour.
Hey, we've willed a bunch of other stuff back into existence.
You know what?
Maybe
That's
over
true.
some Zoom calls, they have patched everything up.
As stated, since Lipton Witch in 2014, there has been no activity or new music from Sunny Day Real Estate. However, in December 2018, William Goldsmith claimed on his Facebook page that there is an unfinished 5th Sunny Day Real Estate album, which has remained silenced, abandoned, and buried within the murkiest depths of Dave Grohl's sock drawer. I have to say, I had no idea this band was such a mess.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed that, like, you look at their discography and it's like, okay, they made 2 really good albums and then 2 okay albums, and that was it. I didn't realize that they broke up and got back together 30 times over 7 years.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like, to your point, it all happened so quickly. Like, you look at their discography at a high level and it looks like a normal pacing for a band. It's like an album in 94, an album in 95, an album in 98, an album in 2000. And then it's like, oh, they broke up 70 times and we're crazy people the whole time.
Yeah.
But all of our creatives are, I guess.
Yes, and look, the fact that they were a little messy didn't change that the music was really good and really influential, and obviously a lot of creative types and a lot of bands we, in particular, really like, really vibed with what Sunny Day Real Estate was doing when they could coordinate to get in the studio. We should probably give some time here to their legacy and their impact on this entire genre that, you know, probably half of our episodes to date could or did mention Sunny Day Real Estate as an influence.
Yeah, this album is, as we said, sort of one of the 3-4 most influential emo albums of all time. It's the 7th best-selling album in Sub Pop's history, which surprised me. It ranked first on LA Weekly's top 20 emo albums list and first on Rolling Stone's top 40 emo albums list. It was 155th on Spin's top 300 albums of 98 to 2014. And I think more important than the record sales and the rankings is what you were alluding to, is how now today with sort of the resurgence of emo or new emo or whatever you want to call it, it all owed such a debt to Sunny Day Real Estate to the point where your friend's title, name, and mine, "The World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die," which I have on a sweater, it fits, released a cover of the Diary track In Circles. It's so good.
So good.
I want them to do the whole album, kind of.
I don't know. I guess you don't do this for bands that have members active in other groups, I guess. Like, I know there was like the Frightened Rabbit tribute cover album or whatever. I would love to get a Sunny Day Real Estate, like, all Diary covers as a tribute to them. You get The World Is a Beautiful Place. You get Stay Inside on there, The Hotel Year. I'm sure Phoebe would give a track.
I think that actually raises a really good point about the sort of, and like we've talked this before, but how sort of the emo genre and like these quote unquote classic emo albums are influencing more than emo now. And like someone like Phoebe Bridgers, who is very open about emo's influence on her life and her music. Like I think you're right. I would assume she would be all over a Sunny Day thing.
By the way, Phoebe Bridgers in a recent interview referred to her like music peers or contemporaries, I guess, as her emo associates. And I think that's what I'm going to refer to our listeners as from now on.
I like that.
Instead of a Patreon supporter, you are an emo associate.
That's what we should have had the level on Patreon.
Yes.
The top level is an emo associate.
Emo associate.
I like that.
All right, man. Well, otherwise, in terms of, influence, again, this is something we could trace a lot of. A couple bands that I mentioned where you can kind of see it now, and maybe you have to trace it back through an influence in between Sunny Day Real Estate and them. But The Hotel Year, one of my favorite bands, had two of my favorite albums of the decade, which we talked about in a Patreon bonus episode. The World Is a Beautiful Place, who we just played, and who, Jake, you had very high on your all decades list as well. Foxing is another band that I hear some Sunny Day Real Estate in. I know you are more passionate about Foxing than I am. Do you hear that there with them too?
Yeah, a lot, especially on their first record. I think it's a lot stronger there. I think they're now becoming sort of their own thing, which is wonderful, and I love deeply because that album was one of my top 5 of the decade. But I think if you listen to The Albatross, which is their first record, you can hear a lot of Sunny Day's influence. I don't think they totally like took directly from it, but a lot of like sort of the slower, groovier emo, I guess, for lack of a better term, is on there.
Jake, we got to rank some songs off the album. We got to pick a song for the mixtape.
So I threw out my top 3 on the album. I feel like that's the easiest. I have 7 at number 1. I have Song About an Angel at number 2, which we did not talk about. And I had In Circles that we just heard covered at number 3. What about you?
Okay. Well, I had 7 In Circles and Sometimes, so I think that pretty safely narrows it down to 7 or In Circles. And we could go either way with that.
I feel like I'm leaning In Circles because I feel like you can hear a lot more of today's emo in it.
Cool. And quite literally.
Yes, and quite literally.
In the case of The World Is a Beautiful Place. We can go with In Circles then as the song from Sunny Day Real Estate for the mixtape. Jake, do you have anything else for us?
No, I think I'm all tapped out on this messy fucking band.
This is the final page of the diary, as it were.
Hey.
Oh, boo. That's even worse than the intro today.
Oh, it was good.
It was fine. It was as messy as Sunny Day Real Estate deserved.
That's fair.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening.
Please try the fish.